everyone to this final Join the Journey Radio Fireside / webinar for 2020 entitled The Fundamentals of LDS Dating. Now, I take it that a lot of you are here in this presentation today because you're frustrated with dating. But you feel like the hamster that's down at the pet shop, inside that little wheel, always running inside that little wheel, but never really getting anywhere. Is that what your efforts at dating feel like? Do you feel like you need to kill yourself, the person that you are on the inside, and become someone entirely different in order to achieve success in the world of LDS dating? Or maybe you just keep struggling to find that special one person and you just can't seem to find that one person. Well, whatever your situation, I want to suggest to you that perhaps the real problem is that you don't understand the fundamentals of what you're trying to do. Frustration is a sign that you're going about something the wrong way. So if you're frustrated with dating and you think that it's hard and something you just don't understand, well, maybe that's a sign you're going about it the wrong way. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about the importance of mastering the fundamentals. Because whatever it is you're trying to do, and dating is a skill, just like any other skill, there are fundamentals associated with it. And when you master those fundamentals, then you don't have a problem exercising skill. And so we're going to talk about the importance of mastering the fundamentals. We're going to talk about what the fundamentals of dating are. And we're going to talk also about how you can start applying these fundamentals to improve your dating life. Now, a lot of the content that I'm going to share with you today is in my book entitled DTR is Dead, in which I go through a lot of what we're going to talk about in much, much more detail than what we have time for in this presentation. So I highly encourage you to get a copy of this book, pick it up, and get more of the details about the fundamentals of dating. That said, this presentation is going to go into a lot of those same fundamentals. So let's start by looking at the importance of learning the fundamentals. Okay, so we really need to understand the importance of the fundamentals of whatever we're trying to do, especially when it comes to dating, because our failure to understand the fundamentals has serious consequences. We all make choices when we're dating, and these choices that we make are based on assumptions and the way that we think. Well, if our assumptions and the way that we think are faulty, that's going to lead us to make poor choices. And so when you consider that the family is under attack like never before, our choices cannot afford to be poor ones. The choices that we make with respect to dating need to be good choices, because those choices are going to be the ones that help to create and promote righteous families. And when we make choices that aren't good, they're not the best, then these choices are going to be poor, and poor choices, when we make those choices consistently, then the adversary wins, because the righteous families that would have been created don't get created. The righteous families that would have been promoted and maintained don't get promoted and maintained. They break down in a divorce, and then there's just shattered lives as a result. So what we really want to understand, first of all, is that this isn't some willy-nilly thing that doesn't really matter if we succeed in it or not. We're in a war with the adversary. And we all know that the adversary has been going about his game for thousands of years. So he knows all of the tricks that he can pull out to help us to make poor choices. If we're going to start making better choices, good choices, the best choices when it comes to dating, then we need to understand a lot of the faulty assumptions and faulty ways of thinking that we've been engaged in, and start to replace those habits of faulty assumptions and faulty ways of thinking with better, more effective habits that will lead us to make choices that create and promote righteous families. So that's the first thing we got to get under our belt. The second thing we got to understand is that anyone who has ever achieved greatness in any field of endeavor, they first mastered the fundamentals. Elder Uchtdorf, he's now Elder Uchtdorf. At the time when he said this in conference, he was actually President Uchtdorf. He talked once in conference, this is back in 2010, about legendary football coach Vince Lombardi. Let's check in and see what he had to say about the fundamentals.
The story is told that the legendary football coach Vince Lombardi had a ritual he performed on the first day of training. He would hold up a football, show it to the athletes who had been playing the sports for many years, and say, "Gentlemen, this is a football." He talked about its size and shape, how it can be kicked, carried, and passed. He took the team out onto the empty field and said, "This is a football field." He walked them around, describing the dimensions, the shape, the rules, and how the game is played. This coach knew that even these experienced players, and indeed the team, could only become great by mastering the fundamentals. They could spend time practicing intricate trick plays, but until they mastered the fundamentals of the game, they would never become a championship team.
Okay, love that. I always love listening to Elder Uchtdorf, whether he's just, a member of the Quorum of the 12 or in the First Presidency, doesn't matter. Uchtdorf is Uchtdorf, and Uchtdorf is fantastic. So, when I heard this back in 2010, my initial response was, what's this guy doing? This is a football? Seriously, man. It's like, of course they know what a football is. It's like they're football players. How can they not know what a football is? And yet, when I reflected on what was going on, it led me to the realization that, well, of course they know what a football is, but they didn't know the fundamentals. And they didn't know those fundamentals so well that no one else could perform better than they did. And that's what made, Vince Lombardi's players a championship team. And that's why he was able to replicate that success year after year after year and become a legend in the world of football, because he understood the fundamentals and he understood how to communicate those fundamentals in a way that the players in his team could understand them and master them. And they mastered them so well that no one performed better than they did. And that's what made them champions. So if you think about any legend that has mastered his or her craft, that's exactly what they did. They knew the fundamentals of their craft so well that they could do it backwards in their sleep. They knew it so well that when it comes time to perform, they just do. They just perform. They just execute. And they do it flawlessly. They don't have to strain their thinking. They don't have to put forth any excessive effort. No, it's nothing like that. They just do. They just do. And so we've all actually mastered skills that way. You may not think so, but it's true. Think about walking. Walking is a skill, and most of us have mastered the skills of walking. Some of us don't really walk, but most of us have mastered the skill of walking. Now, think about when you were first walking as a toddler. You probably fell down a lot. If you're anything like me, you fell down on your face and your bum, both multiple times. And so, you just didn't know what you were doing. And so you're just kind of mulling your way through this old stuff. And then, but you kept going. As you learned fundamentals that apply to that skill and you mastered them, you improved. Your performance improved. And now today, most of us have mastered the skill of walking so well that we don't even think about executing when it comes time to execute. When it comes time to walk, we just walk. There's no strain of thinking. There's none of that. No. We don't even think about the steps we're taking as we're taking them. Most of the time, we just do because we've mastered the fundamentals and we've mastered them so well that when it comes time to do, we just do. Well, this applies to any skill, and dating is a skill, just like any other. It has fundamentals associated with it. And when you master the fundamentals of dating, then when it comes time to do, you just do. And it's easy and flawless. Your execution is so smooth and masterful that you don't even think about what you're doing. You could do it backwards in your sleep. Anyone who says dating is hard is basically admitting they don't understand the fundamentals of what they're trying to do. Because when you master the fundamentals, whatever it is you're trying to do becomes easy. So let's take a look at the fundamentals of dating. What are these fundamentals that we need to master? Let's talk about that. Okay, just like we saw with that example from Vince Lombardi, this is a football. Well, yeah, okay. They seem stupid to talk about the dimensions of the football, but it's part of the fundamentals of football is to understand what it is you're dealing with. So we've got to do the same thing with dating. And one of the things that we all understand, is involved with dating is this whole idea of agency, right? Because people have agency. They choose to extend an invitation or not extend it. They choose to accept an invitation or not accept it. That's the way it goes. And so agency is a huge part of what we're trying to do. Well, when it comes to agency, you got to understand the fundamental, thing about agency is that you can change only two things. There's only two things you can change. Yourself, your environment. That's it. Now, they may not seem like a whole lot. It may seem like, your palette is pretty limited, but those two levers are extremely powerful. We're going to talk about that here. So, because you only have two choices, okay, there's only two things you can change, yourself and your environment. That means you really only have four choices in any situation. So the first is you change only yourself. Second, you can change your environment and just your environment. Third, you can change yourself and your environment. Or fourth, you can change neither yourself nor your environment. Now, I go into a lot more detail in my book, DTR is Dead. But all things being equal, your best choice is always number one. But that's why it's number one, right? And that's why I put that as number one, because that is your number one choice. Changes in yourself are always the best choices to be making. Always. Now, sometimes things aren't equal, in which case your best choice is number three. That's changing yourself and your environment. But the bottom line is, okay, you're going to maximize your success when you own your life and take responsibility for the outcomes you have in your life. So many people don't have success in dating because they keep looking for the reasons for their failure outside of themselves. It's that other person. That other person wouldn't accept me. That other person chose against me. And so you keep playing this victim mentality, and that's holding you back. It really is holding you back. So what you need, more than anything else, to start out with is to say, look, let's understand one of the fundamentals of agency, which is, yeah, they have choices, and they make their choices, but very often their choices are made in response to the choices that you make. So by making choices in yourself and changing your environment, you provide them with a different influence so that they make choices that are more in your favor. And that just comes back to choices that you're making. But you aren't likely to make those choices when you won't take responsibility for yourself, when you refuse to own your life. And that's why I come back to this. Longtime listeners of Join the Journey Radio program are going to understand this is one of the themes I keep harping back to. Own your life. One of the best ways to have joy without any change in your circumstances. Just start owning your life. Just start taking responsibility for the outcomes that you have in your life and recognize the power that you have to make changes in your life to make it more of what you want it to be. Now, we're going to come back to these ideas later, but for right now, I want you to keep them in mind because they're going to come in really handy as we start talking about other fundamentals of the dating journey and then ways in which we can apply those fundamentals to the dating journey. So just keep these ideas in the back of your mind for now. All right, here we go. Every good seasoned traveler knows that if you're going to arrive safely and most efficiently at your destination, the best, quickest way to get there is with a good map. If you're trying to, if you're trying, for example, you're trying to get to the Statue of Liberty, right? But you've got a map of Chicago. It's not going to help you get to the Statue of Liberty. Statue of Liberty is on Ellis Island and, out in the harbor in New York City. A map of Chicago is not going to do you much good. Now, of course, if you're trying to get to the Sears Tower, then Sears Tower's in Chicago. Map of Chicago can help you get there. Well, a lot of the things that we encounter when we're dating, it's just really the fault of not having a good map. It's not like anyone really, gives us instructions. Okay, son, this is how you date. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. And the response that we get is from many of our married leaders is they just simply, it's like they're throwing us in the pool and expecting us to learn how to swim the Navy way. It's sink or swim. And many are sinking rather than swimming because they don't understand the fundamentals of what they're trying to do. They don't have a good map to help them navigate in their dating journey. So what I'm going to introduce you to now, I go into much more detail about this in my book, so be sure to pick this up. But here we have what I call the dating journey map. And this may seem very simplistic. Again, it goes back to that Vince Lombardi example. This is a football. Well, yeah, duh, of course this is a football. There's going to be a lot of duh things in here that you're going to be looking at and saying, yeah, everybody knows this. But I'm telling you, okay, you got to focus in on fundamentals and really master them. So here we have the dating journey map. I'm going to introduce you to the different stages of the journey here. So first, there on the far left, you see we've got friendship. And in the friendship stage, there's no real commitment. It involves multiple people, and it's, no or low pain to end. And then from friendship, we can move into casual dating. Casual dating involves a low level of commitment, which, of course, this is important we get this down because so many of us falter in this stage of the journey because we ascribe a higher level of commitment to casual dating than what it really merits. And that trips us up. So this is why I'm going over this stuff. We understand the fundamentals. It may seem simplistic, but the way we act suggests that we don't understand these very simple concepts. So casual dating is a low level of commitment, and it involves multiple partners. Okay, playing the field is actually a very healthy way to approach dating in the casual dating stage. And there's a low pain to end, relatively. When I say low, it's relative. It's all relative, right? And then from casual dating, we can move to exclusive dating. Exclusive dating is where you've only got one partner because, you are dating someone who is dating only you. So when you're dating someone, and only that someone, who is in turn dating you and only you, then you're in the exclusive dating stage. And this has a moderate level of commitment. It involves only one partner, and there's a moderate amount of pain to end the relationship in this stage. Next, we have the engagement stage, which has a high level of commitment, involves only one partner, and has a high level of pain to end. I know about that because I was engaged at one time. The whole thing fell apart, and I can tell you it was not a pleasant thing to go through. And then, of course, the final stage of the dating journey is marriage. And notice this is a stage. This is a stage, right? So it's not like you quit dating once you get married. Ideally, you should continue to date while you're married. So there's always that. But that's why this is a stage here on this part of the dating journey map. This represents the ultimate commitment level to just one partner. And of course, because there's an ultimate level of commitment with just one partner, there's a crazy amount of pain that comes to you when you end the relationship in this stage of your journey. So this is a basic introduction to the dating journey map. And now that we've talked for a moment about the actual map, I've shown it to you. So now the question becomes, how do we navigate with the map? How do we use it to get to our destination? Well, as with any map, the first thing you do in order to use a map is you got to orient yourself. Find out where you are on the map. That's really easy to do with the dating journey map. And the reason is because the next fundamental of dating I'm going to share with you is this. To make progress from one stage of the journey to another, you've got to have the necessary agreement. All of these stages in the dating journey have an agreement associated with them. And in order to transition to any stage, you must have the attendant agreement. If you don't have the agreement, you don't progress to that stage, period. That's it. So to know where you are on the map, you basically ask yourself, which of these agreements have I made and which have I not? You can only go as far as you have agreements. And we all know what agreements we've made. So for example, the agreement to transition to the casual dating stage is a date. You have an agreement to go on a date. If you don't have an agreement to go on a date, you're still in the friendship stage. And you may want to, date that person that you've got your eye on. And you may want to be on a date with that person so much, it does not matter how much you want it. And it goes the other way too. So you can flip that coin over and say, okay, there's another person who may want to date you, but if you don't agree to it, you're not there. You're not in the casual dating stage. You're in the friendship stage because you need to have an agreement to progress to that stage of the process, that stage of the journey. And so, if you don't have an agreement, you don't have any progress. This is so fundamental to get your arms around, okay? Because it leads to two very important conclusions when it comes to dating. The first is that you have control over your dating life, right? It's like, if I'm not going to be where I don't want to be, and I don't have to be, because it doesn't matter what the other person wants. It doesn't matter what the other person does. Ultimately, that person is not going to be in a stage of the dating journey with me if I don't agree to it. So once you realize the power that gives you, you start to understand you have control over your dating life. And when you take responsibility for your outcomes and own your life, you then find yourself liberated. Because now you understand I can control a lot of what's going on in my life. And even though other people are making decisions that affect and influence my life, I have control over a large part of it. I have control over my dating life because I have to agree in order to make progress. So it doesn't matter if somebody else wants it. I'm not going to go there if I don't want to go there. Likewise, flip that back around again. If I want to go somewhere, then that means I got to reach an agreement with somebody else. I've got to convince somebody else to make that agreement so that I get to be in the stage that I want with the people I want. So, this actually controls a lot of the focus and the perspective that you have when it comes to dating, which is so lacking in the way a lot of us are approaching dating. Now, the second important conclusion we get from this idea that if there's no agreement, there's no progress, is this. That, if you want to progress, you need to secure an agreement. Because again, remember, in order to progress, you have to have an agreement. So how do you get an agreement? By being agreeable. And you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be agreeable enough. So many of us get into this mindset of, we feel like we have to be perfect in order to get the other person to choose in our favor. But we don't. We just need to be good enough. And good enough is a very flexible, fluid concept that can change with the wind, change with the weather. So based on choices that you make with your attitude and how you carry yourself and how you present yourself and how you extend an invitation and how you accept an invitation, and depending on, which side of this you're on, I mean, that can influence the choices the other person makes with respect to you. And so, so many of the dating decisions that we make are poor decisions because they revolve around self. See, we're not focused on being agreeable enough. We're focused on perfect. And we're focused on what we want, the perfection that we want to see in other people. But the fact of the matter is, that doesn't really lead to real success. Because, so many of our dating decisions revolve around self so much that the self has center stage. Well, let's say you actually do, find your way to progress through all the needed agreements to get through all the stages of the dating journey. And you're there, you're married at the end. How long do you think it's going to be before you get divorced if self continues to take center stage? I guarantee you, okay, your marriage is not going to be lasting. And it's going to be very miserable while it does last. Because the people who have the most joy in these relationships are the ones who are not placing self at center stage. Now, that doesn't mean that they completely surrender to whatever their companion wants. It doesn't mean that at all. What it means is they find a way to balance, what's agreeable to them, what's agreeable to their partner, and then what's best for the union and the family that they're creating together. Again, no agreement means there's no progress. You gotta get that really hammered in your brain. And the way you make progress is by being more agreeable. So the first thing we need to keep in mind when we're trying to apply the fundamentals to our own unique situations, okay? First, the obvious question is going to be, okay, so in order to progress, I have to secure an agreement, and to secure an agreement, I have to be agreeable enough. So then, how do you become agreeable enough? How do you become more agreeable? Well, remember we talked about earlier when I said you have only 4 choices. And what was the first choice? The first choice was always what? Change yourself. See, the natural man, the natural woman, they don't accept responsibility for self. Okay, so, all of us have the natural man, the natural woman inside of us, depending on if you're a man or a woman, obviously. So, we all have this natural tendency to want to put self first. We all have this natural tendency to want someone to love us the way we are. The natural man and the natural woman resist change. They find comfort in the status quo. And so, to overcome the natural man and the natural woman, which is what we want to do as covenant men and covenant women, we want to resist that natural tendency. There's so many of us who are just pining for something to just be thrust upon us. I'm reminded of that line from Feste in Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. That's a favorite Shakespeare play, by the way. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon. Something to that effect. It's been a while since I read it. Anywho, we're waiting for something to come to us. That's not owning your life. That's not owning your life. That's not taking responsibility for your outcome. See, when you take responsibility for the outcome you have in your life, you're going to recognize, hey, I got agency. I got power to choose. I have the power to do things for myself. I'm going to start doing things for myself. I'm going to start making a difference in my life and start changing my life and making it what I really want it to be. So when you approach the fundamentals of dating with that attitude and say, okay, in order to progress these different stages, I have to secure the agreement. Well, how do I become agreeable enough to secure the agreement? First choice is always make changes in yourself. So, we've got to get rid of this tendency that a lot of people have to say, I just want someone to love me for me. Why can't someone just love me the way that I am? Yeah, you know what? Most of the time it doesn't work that way, because if you're not getting what you want, Okay, if you're not progressing through the different stages of the dating journey, guess what, peeps? You're not agreeable enough to the people you're presenting yourself to. So you really have two choices with this, right? I mean, you either take the proactive approach and say, well, actually, I should say the more proactive approach, because the other choice has somewhat proactive too. You take the more proactive approach and say, I'm going to make changes in myself. So I become my best self. I become more agreeable. It doesn't mean killing the person that you are. Remember, I said your best self. So the things that are still essential to your identity are still in there in your best self. You don't have to obliterate those. But you do need to overcome enough of your imperfections so that you become agreeable enough. That's what you need to really get focused in on. Become agreeable enough. So that's the more proactive. The second proactive, it's got some proactivity to it. The second option is you got to find different people to present yourself to. Because what's agreeable to one person is not necessarily agreeable to the next. So you've got to find people in your life who are going to find, you agreeable enough. So you got to pitch yourself to different people. Now, if you're a woman, wondering when that next date invitation is going to come your way, ask yourself, how can you change yourself to solicit more invitations? Keep in mind, when I say change yourself, I'm not just talking about your physical person. I'm also talking about your life and your expectations for what makes a prospective date acceptable. Again, I go through all of this in more detail in my book. So, if you don't have it, pick it up, check it out. Likewise, if you're a man wondering why your invitation gets rejected, it's the same deal, guys. Okay, you ask yourself, how can you become more agreeable? What changes can you make in yourself to become more agreeable? And in this effort, it's essential to focus on the place where you are. So, a lot of us get into trouble with this because, going back to the dating process map, we think that we got our eye on that end goal of marriage when we're really stuck here in the casual dating stage. And that just throws everything out of line. It's like if you're in the casual dating stage, guess what? You need to be focused on what's right in front of you. Which this is the next agreement you need to make to move to the next stage. Okay, the agreement to move from the casual dating stage to the exclusive dating stage is, you get your partner to agree to be your significant other. You make that agreement. We're only going to date each other. Once you have that agreement secured, boom, you're in the next stage. You make progress in your journey. That's really what it is. Okay, if you keep your focus anywhere else except on what's right in front of you, you're going to trip all over yourself, just like you were when you were a toddler learning how to walk. So focus on the next step. Focus on where your feet are. It's like you're looking up at a summit, and if you're trying to climb the summit, if you keep looking at the summit and never at where your feet are, you're going to keep tripping all over yourself. Now, of course, once in a while, you got to gaze at the summit so that you can see and make sure you're headed in the same direction. But you don't keep your gaze fixed there. For the most part, you're focused on where your feet are and where's that next step that you're going to take. That's how you make progress. Dating's no different. So you want to get this down and, keep your focus on that next agreement you need to make progress in your journey. Now, remember, the second option that we had after changes in self were changes in environment. And for many singles, a change in environment simply means a change of address. But, that rarely brings success. Again, the natural inclination is to avoid changes in self, because the natural man and woman resists that change in self. So it's easy for a lot of people to think, oh, well, I just need to change in my environment. I just need to be somewhere else. I need to live in a different ward. I need to, be in a different part of the country. Well, okay, you know what? A change in address will change your environment, but that rarely brings you the success that you want, because if all you do is change your address, then the old you simply has a new address. And it's the old you that's bringing in all the problems and the frustrations that you have, because it's the old you that's not agreeable enough. So until you start taking ownership of your life, start taking responsibility for yourself, and throw off this victim mentality and start putting on the victor mentality and start thinking, hey, I can make choices to change me and get good with you on the inside. Until you start doing that, you're going to keep running into the same roadblocks, because that old you is just not agreeable enough. You have to change you so that you become more agreeable. It's really, it's really what it is. And I know a lot of you aren't going to want to hear that, but that's it. So if you want more success in your dating journey, that's where it starts. It starts with changes in you. Now, remember, the third choice, I said sometimes you can get success with changing yourself and your environment. And for some singles, this is the most effective approach. So you work on becoming your best self, that changes in you, while at the same time you change your environment to support your best self. So if you have any friends in your life, who are basically fake friends, they just don't believe in you. They're holding you back from making the positive changes that you need to make in order to become more agreeable, because misery loves company, right? So you need to get rid of these people from your life, and you need to replace them with people who will support you in becoming your best self. You can also make changes in your environment by changing your approach, looking for different places for that someone who will more easily find you more agreeable. Change your environment by being willing to accept opportunities that other people don't consider to be opportunities. Again, I go a lot more in detail with that in the book, so be sure to pick that up. But, this idea of making changes in yourself and your environment. Sometimes, I talk about, change of environment, change of address. Sometimes that is effective, but that only works if you change you first. Okay, don't give the old you a new address. Okay, get rid of the old you, become a new you, and then move to the new address after you change to the new you. That could be effective. Reason being is that everyone has what's called a dating reputation. Most people don't think about this. Again, there's more of this in the book. There's so much more of this in the book. I go into what's called a dating reputation, where most people don't think about the reputation that they have as a dating prospect. So when you establish a dating reputation that says, you're a loser, nothing you do is it's really gonna be difficult to overcome that, type of reputation. So if you have that reputation for being somebody who's just generally not agreeable enough, then, making the changes that you need in you to become a better you, become your best self, become more agreeable, and then you take that new you and give that new you a new address, the people who are around the new address, they don't know the old you. And so you'll be building a brand new reputation, one that's much, much more agreeable to and conducive to the ends that you want. So that may be a strategy that you want to think about. I would think, though, just overall, I would say, look, that's kind of like a tourniquet option. You're talking about moving. Moving's a serious thing. Okay? And I know because I moved a lot of times in my life. But it's expensive, it's costly, it's time consuming. It puts a break in your career that a lot of employers don't like to see. It can, and when you think about like the service that you give in the church, everything in the church revolves around stakes and wards, which are bounded by geographical boundaries. So where you live, in a lot of ways, determines the opportunities you have for service. So you want to think about and be careful about this whole idea about moving. I wouldn't just do it willy-nilly, okay? Again, oftentimes, I think for the vast majority of us, simply making changes in ourselves and becoming our best selves in the place where we are, that's going to be sufficient, because when you combine that with a lot of the other techniques that I talk about in the book about, finding different places and different ways to go about finding someone who will find you more agreeable, then that's going to be the combination you need to make the progress you need to get through your dating journey successfully. And then, of course, the last option, which was, you don't change yourself, you don't change your environment, so there's no change at all. Well, that's the option that's going to appeal most to the natural man, the natural woman. Everything stays the same. Obviously, if you want your life to change, this is not a real option for you. Okay, I list it because it's a possibility, something you could choose, but I don't think you really want to choose it because it's not going to lead you to the end that you want. Now, I could see there may be a possible exception to that rule. Maybe a possible exception to that rule. If you consider someone who's got their game on, they're doing everything right, it's just a matter of time before they realize the success they're looking for. That is going to be the rare individual. Because most of us need to make changes in ourselves to become more agreeable. That's just the bottom line. Most of us need to make changes in ourselves. We're imperfect enough to where that's what's got to take place. So, I don't think that this last option of no change is really a viable option for most of us. Again, maybe there's like 1% of the population who, they don't need to change anything, and they just need to keep moving, and eventually they'll find their success. But most of us don't live in that 1% territory. Most of us live in the 99% territory. And so, again, your best option is going to be make changes in you first. And then if you need to make changes in your environment, in addition to that, to support the changes you're making in you, then go do that. But the core of your approach is going to be change yourself first. Become your best self so you can then live your best life. So I keep harping back to the book because there's so much more in the book and we just did not have time to cover today. So, and I don't want to sound like an infomercial for the book. I mean, I have left you with some, really good pieces of information that you can apply without actually getting the book. But if you do get the book, then, you're going to learn so much more that we did not have time to cover in this Fireside webinar presentation today, including, I run through doing the math to show you how to increase your probability of success. I, show you how to recognize opportunities that many other people don't even see, mostly because they don't recognize that they're opportunities. We talk about the importance of using no fewer than 3 perspectives when assessing other individuals. We talk about why good enough can lead to more success than being perfect. Making important changes in yourself that lead to dating success. That's what's in the book. So you really need to grab a copy of that book. If you haven't already, you can get on Amazon, go to the Join the Journey Radio website. I'm going to have links to it there on the website, jointhejourneyradio.com. You can go there and pick up your own copy of his book and get the 411 on more ways to apply the fundamentals of dating and get really grounded in what those fundamentals are, because I'm telling you, that's really what's going to lead to your ultimate success. Getting grounded in fundamentals. Life is always going to have its challenges, but if you look for opportunities and not the obstacles, that'll make all the difference. I mean, the road to your success is oftentimes right in front of you, and you just need a new perspective in order to see it. So if you're always looking for the obstacles, you're never going to have the success that you really dream of having. I mean, if you look at all the options before you and you keep discounting, no, I mean, come on. I mean, that's really what you're doing. You're really putting yourself into a corner. You're really shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak, because you're just taking all these opportunities and you're throwing them away. And you feel okay with it because you don't think it's an opportunity, but it is. All of these things you're throwing away are opportunities. You just don't see them. You just don't recognize them. Because again, faulty thinking. again, this goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning. It's not just about you living a happy life. It's about the plan that our Heavenly Father has for all of His children. And a key part of that plan is the creation and maintenance of righteous families. And so the dating decisions that we make should be those that promote righteous families. That doesn't mean that we're interchangeable parts. What it means is we need to get rid of faulty assumptions and faulty ways of thinking up here in our head. And we need to replace those with more effective assumptions and more effective thinking. Understanding the fundamentals of dating represents a key core part of those, more effective assumptions, a more effective way of thinking. And I've shared pretty much the gist of it here with you in this presentation. Of course, there's more in the book, so I highly encourage you to get a copy of the book. All in all, I want to leave you with this thought. We've talked today about fundamentals of dating and the dating journey, and I want you to consider your own level of mastery of these fundamentals and take the courage to make the changes that you see you need to make. The Lord wants us to enjoy the blessings of righteous marriage and family. He wants that for all of us. Because that's His plan. And that's a part of where the happiness that He wants us to have is going to come from. But, in order for us to achieve that end, achieve those blessings, we've got to make choices that are conducive to that end. And, the way in which we approach that end, the way we approach those choices that lead to that end, it all comes back to how well have we mastered the fundamentals of what we're trying to do. So when you master the fundamentals, and you master it so well that you could do it backwards in your sleep, when it comes time to execute, you simply do. And it's easy and effortless. It's not hard at all. And a lot of the pain that a lot of people have with their dating effort, well, that goes away. The reason why my book is entitled DTR is Dead is because when you understand the fundamentals and you master them, you master them so well, there's no need for DTR. There's no need to define the relationship because it's already defined in the dating journey map. And once you understand the dating journey map and the fundamentals that are encoded in the map, dating becomes easy. Dating becomes fun. And you are welcomed into the world of TED, where TED stands for truly enjoyable dating. So that's all the time we have. I'm so thankful that all of you have been able to, sit through this. And, I hope you learned something. I hope it was worth something to you. I hope in exchange for your time, I was able to give you something that's worthwhile, something that can help you, something that gets you thinking about things in a different way and seeing things in a different way. I know that the principles I've shared with you are true. I know that as I've applied those fundamentals in my own life, my dating life has just exponentially rocketed skyward. That my dating life is so much more than it was before. It's so much more of everything that's good and positive and enjoyable and just wonderful. And even though I'm still single, because I'm still working on mastering the fundamentals myself, and again, this is not some overnight thing. This is things that take time. But I found that as I practice and I get better at executing these fundamentals, I've found more and more success in my dating life. And even though I'm still single, I know that I'm going to get there one day. And the journey on the way there is much more enjoyable and joyous than it was before I was practicing these fundamentals. It's something transformative. It's something that I just plain feel better inside. So I know that these principles are true principles. And I know that if you will apply them effectively in your own life, as the Spirit directs you, you will have a journey that's enjoyable as you press forward to the blessings the Lord wants to provide for you in your life. I know this is true, and I leave that testimony with you in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.